Friday, February 13th, 2026, I walked into my parents' house in Aurora with a cake in my hands and that same tired hope in my chest that maybe tonight would be normal. Mom had the good plates out like she was trying to prove we were fine. Dad barely looked up. My brother Kyle was already wired like he had a secret he could not wait to drop. My sister Ashley came in loud and smiling like every room was her stage. We made it through the first part of dinner, the polite talk, the forced laughter, Mom pretending she was not watching everyone like a referee. Then Dad cleared his throat and I felt my stomach sink because I knew that sound. It meant a lecture or a demand was coming. Kyle leaned forward and started talking fast about an opportunity, a partner, a warehouse space, the kind of vague dream pitch that always ends with someone else paying the bill. Ashley backed him up like she had rehearsed it, throwing in words like family and loyalty and how Mom deserved a peaceful birthday weekend. Then Kyle finally said the number, 50,000. He said it like it was nothing, like I was a vending machine that just needed the right button pushed. Mom looked at me with that pleading face she uses when she wants something but cannot stand the shame of asking. Dad stared like he was daring me to refuse. I put my fork down and said no. Kyle's face tightened instantly. Ashley's smile dropped. Mom's eyes went shiny. Dad stood up slow like he was getting ready to pass a sentence. After everything we have done for you, Dad said, you are really going to be selfish. I stayed calm because the moment I reacted, they would make my reaction the story. I am not giving Kyle $50,000, I said. Ashley jumped in right away, voice sharp, saying I was doing this on Mom's birthday, saying I had plenty of money, saying I was punishing everyone just to prove a point. Kyle started pacing, talking about how I always think I am better than him, how I do not understand risk, how I owe him because we grew up in the same house. Then Dad said the words that flipped the whole table over. If you cannot support your own blood, then consider yourself disowned. It went dead quiet. Even Mom stopped moving. I looked at my family and realized they were not bluffing to make a point. They were testing whether I would fold. So I stood up, pushed my chair in, and said one word. Fine. I walked out of the house while my mom called my name behind me, and I did not look back because I could feel the old chain trying to wrap around my ankle again, and I was done letting it. When I got home that night, my hands were shaking in a way that made me angry at myself, because I had not been physically afraid of my family in years, but my body still reacted like that dining room was a battlefield. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights off, just the glow from the microwave clock and the streetlight filtering through the blinds, and I stared at my phone like it was going to tell me how to be a different person. My kid was asleep, sprawled sideways on the bed the way kids do when they feel safe, and I stood in the doorway for a minute looking at him, thinking about what it means to be a father. I thought about how I would never threaten to disown him to win an argument. I thought about how I would never make my love conditional on a bank transfer. Then I went back downstairs and opened my banking app. Here is what my family never fully understood about me. I am not dramatic when I finally move. I do not scream and throw things. I do not make speeches. I get quiet and I solve the problem like a system. I pulled up the automatic transfers first. There was the monthly payment to Mom's mortgage assistance account. There was Kyle's truck payment. There was the cell phone family plan. There was the little credit card I kept in my name that my mom used for groceries because it was easier than having her call me every time she came up short. I had set these up over time as a way to stop the constant panic calls, and now they were all lined up like tiny chains. I shut them off. Every one of them. Then I logged into the account where I had my mom listed as an authorized user. I removed her. I froze the card. I changed the password. My heart was pounding, not because I thought I was doing something wrong, but because I was doing something new. I was choosing consequences. I went to bed around 2 in the morning with that weird hollow feeling in my chest, like I had finally pulled a splinter out but the skin was still raw. I slept maybe 3 hours. Saturday morning I woke up to 10 missed calls, then 20, then 30. At first it was Kyle, because Kyle always reacts like the world is ending when his comfort gets interrupted. Then Ashley, because Ashley cannot resist inserting herself into any emotional event. Then my mom. Then my dad. Then numbers I did not recognize, which I later realized were relatives, because in my family the moment conflict happens, it gets outsourced to the entire extended network like a group project. I did not answer. Around 9:30 my phone lit up with a text from Kyle. What the hell did you do? My truck payment got declined. Then Ashley. Are you seriously punishing Mom? This is disgusting. Then my dad. Call me now. Then my mom. Honey, please call me. I stared at the messages and felt the old programming kick in, that itch to fix it, to smooth it, to make it okay so the noise stops. But I also felt something else, something steadier. I thought about the word disowned. I thought about how casually my dad had used it like he had been waiting for a reason. So I did not answer. By lunchtime it escalated. Kyle showed up at my house. He did not knock like a normal person. He banged on the door like he was trying to break it down, and when I opened it he pushed his way onto my porch with his face red and his jaw tight. You think you can just cut me off, he said. And his voice was already rising. I kept my voice low because I did not want my kid waking up and hearing it. You said I was disowned, I said. That means you do not get to treat me like an ATM anymore. Kyle laughed, sharp and nasty. It was a joke, he snapped. Dad was just mad. You always take everything so literal. There it was, the first attempt to rewrite reality. The first attempt to make me the problem for believing the words they said. I told him to leave. Kyle stepped closer, and for a second I thought he might actually swing at me, but then he did something worse. He smiled like he was about to twist a knife. You do not want to do this, he said. You do not want to start a war with us. I asked him what that meant. He shrugged like he was casual, like he was talking about football. Mom knows things, he said. Dad knows things. You think your life is as perfect as you pretend. You think nobody can mess with your business. That was the moment the conflict stopped being about money and turned into something darker, because suddenly I could see what had always been underneath. It was never gratitude. It was leverage. Kyle left when I told him I would call the police if he did not get off my property. And he spat at the edge of my driveway like a teenager. When his truck pulled away, my hands were shaking again, not from fear, but from the realization that my family was not going to accept boundaries peacefully. They were going to punish me for setting them. That afternoon my mom called again, and I finally answered because I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know whether she was part of the threat or just caught in it. She started crying immediately. Honey, please, she said, your father is furious. Kyle is losing his mind. Ashley is saying you are doing this to embarrass us. It was a joke. It was just something your dad said in the moment. I leaned against the kitchen counter and felt my stomach twist. Mom, I said, disowning your son is not a joke. She sniffed and said, you know how your father is. That line, you know how he is, had covered every bruise in our family for decades. It was the blanket they threw over bad behavior so nobody had to look at it. Then she said the part that hit me hardest. I cannot make the mortgage payment without your help, she whispered. I closed my eyes. There it was. The real dependency. The real trap. The reason I had been carrying this load. If I said no, my mom got hurt. If I said yes, the machine kept running. I told her I loved her, and I told her I was not turning the money back on. She went quiet, and then she said something that made my throat tighten. So you are really leaving us. I wanted to scream that they were the ones who pushed me out, but instead I said, I am not leaving, Mom. I am finally standing still. She hung up crying, and I sat at my kitchen table staring at the wood grain like it might spell out the right choice. That night, the obstacles multiplied. My business line got a voicemail from someone claiming to be a concerned community member asking if we were laundering money. Then my landlord for our warehouse called asking why someone had reported a safety violation. Then a client emailed asking if a rumor was true that I was being investigated. It was not subtle. It was pressure. It was my family trying to reach into the one place they thought I cared about more than my pride, which was the life I built. And the worst part was realizing they knew exactly where to press, because they had been watching me for years, not with love, but with calculation. Sunday morning, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I asked for help from someone who was not related to me. I called my friend Marcus, a guy I had known since my early 20s, back when I was just trying to keep a steady job and not repeat my dad's anger. Marcus worked in banking and risk management, and he had that calm voice that makes you breathe slower just hearing it. He answered on the second ring, and I said, I need you to listen and tell me if I am crazy. I told him everything, the dinner, the disowned line, the money shutoff, the threats, the sudden calls to my business. Marcus was quiet for a long time, And then he said something that made my skin go cold. "They are not improvising," he said. "This sounds planned." I asked him what he meant. He told me to check my credit. I pulled it up while we were still on the phone, and I felt my whole body go hot. There were two hard inquiries I did not recognize. One for a personal loan. One for a line of credit. My mouth went dry. Marcus told me to scroll further. I saw an account in review, not approved yet, but in process, with my name and the right address, and a phone number that was not mine. Someone had tried to open a loan in my name. I felt like I might throw up. Marcus told me to lock my credit immediately, and he stayed on the phone while I did it, walking me through the steps like he was defusing a bomb. Then he said, "You need a lawyer, not tomorrow, today." That was the unexpected discovery, the key that shifted everything. This was not just a family fight. This was attempted fraud. The betrayal landed in a different part of my chest than the disowned line did. The disowned line was emotional violence. This was something else. This was them reaching into my identity, my future, my kids' stability, because they believed they were entitled to anything attached to my name. I drove into Chicago that afternoon and met with a lawyer Marcus recommended, a woman named Renee Porter who had the kind of sharp focus that makes you sit up straighter. She listened without interrupting, took notes, asked precise questions, and when I showed her the credit report, she nodded like she had seen this movie before. "You are going to document everything," she said. "You are going to stop speaking to them by phone. You are going to move all communication to text or email. You are going to protect your business assets. And you are going to be ready for them to escalate when they realize you are serious." I asked her, quietly, what happens if they actually did try to take out a loan in my name. Renee looked me in the eye and said, "Then we treat it like a crime, because it is." I sat there in that law office with traffic noise faint outside the window, and I felt this strange split inside me, because part of me was still the kid who wanted his mom to hug him and say she was sorry, and part of me was a grown man realizing that love does not require you to be defenseless. Then Renee asked me a question that made me pause. "Who in your family has access to your personal information?" she asked. My mind went straight to my mom because she kept all the old files, birth certificates, tax forms, insurance paperwork, the stuff moms keep in manila folders because they think it is responsible. Then it went to Ashley because Ashley always knew too much about everyone. Then it went to my dad because my dad had always treated paperwork like power. Renee suggested something I did not want to do but needed to. "Go check your parents' house," she said, "if you can do it peacefully, and see what files are missing or moved. Do not confront anyone alone. Bring someone with you." So I brought Marcus. We drove out to Aurora that evening, and my hands were tight on the steering wheel. I texted my mom first and said I needed to pick up some personal documents from the old filing cabinet, that I would be quick. She replied almost immediately, too quickly, and said okay, but your father is not home. When we got there, my mom opened the door with swollen eyes and tried to hug me, and I let her, because I am not made of stone, but I kept my body firm like a boundary you can feel. Marcus stayed behind me like quiet backup. Mom led me to the hallway closet where the filing cabinet used to be, and when she opened it, the top drawer was half empty. My throat tightened. I asked her where the missing folders were. She looked at the floor and said, "Your father moved some things." I asked why. She said, "He said he needed to organize." That was a lie, and we all knew it. I opened the drawer further and found the folder with my name, but it was lighter than it should have been. The copy of my birth certificate was gone. The old tax records were gone. The paperwork that had my social security number was gone. My mom's hands started shaking. "I did not take them," she said quickly. "I did not. I swear." I believed her, which was the cruelest part because it meant someone else did. Then my mom whispered, like she was confessing a sin. "Your father said you were hiding money from us," she said. "He said you were selfish. He said he had to protect the family. Protect the family. By stealing from me." That was when I understood the full shape of it. The disowning line was not a joke. It was a tactic. It was a test to see if I would fold. When I did not fold, they moved to the next tactic, which was intimidation, and when that did not work, they tried to take what they wanted by force. Marcus and I left with the documents I could salvage, and I told my mom to tell my dad one thing. If he contacts my business again or touches my identity again, I will file a police report. My mom cried harder and said, "Please do not do this." I looked at her and felt my heart twist. "Mom," I said, "I am not doing this. He is." Monday morning, I walked into my office with the kind of focus that feels like a storm warning. The building smelled like coffee and printer toner, normal life smells, and my staff was already buzzing with the week, and for a moment I wanted to pretend everything was fine. Then my assistant came into my office with her face pale and said, "There is a man in the lobby asking for you." I knew before she said the name. It was my dad. I walked out to the lobby and there he was, in his heavy coat, shoulders squared, jaw set, holding himself like he owned the place. People in the lobby were staring because my dad has that way of taking up space like the world is supposed to make room. He looked at me and said, "We need to talk." I said, "You need to leave." His eyes narrowed. "You are going to embarrass me in front of your employees," he said, like that was the real crime. I kept my voice steady. "You embarrassed yourself the moment you tried to take out a loan in my name," I said. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his expression. Not guilt, not shame, surprise, like he did not expect me to know. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. "You do not know what you are talking about," he said. I said, "I do." He looked around at the people watching and then he did the thing he always does when he feels cornered. He escalated. He raised his voice. "This is what you have become," he said. "Ungrateful. A man who abandons his family. You cut off your own mother. Do you even hear yourself?" My employees were staring. My assistant looked like she wanted to disappear. I could feel the old reflex to shrink, to make it private, to protect the image. Then I remembered my kid asleep sideways on his bed, safe, because I built a life where safety exists. I remembered Kyle's smirk on my porch. I remembered my mom whispering, "Your father moved some things." And I realized something clear and hard. If I gave in now, it would never stop. So I did the decisive move that felt like stepping off a cliff and finding out you can actually fly. I said calmly and loudly enough for the lobby to hear, "You are trespassing. If you do not leave, I will call the police." My dad froze like he could not believe I had said it. Then he laughed, sharp and ugly. "You would call the police on your own father," he said. I nodded once. "Yes," I said. That word yes felt heavier than any yes I had ever given them, because this one was for me, not for their comfort. My dad's face reddened, and he stepped closer like he might push past me, like he might try to force his way into my office. I saw my security camera in the corner, saw my employees watching, saw the reality that I was not a trapped kid in a hallway anymore. I was a grown man with witnesses and rights. I pulled my phone out and started dialing. My dad backed up, and the look he gave me was pure hatred. "This is not over," he said. Then he turned and walked out, shoulders rigid. Like he was leaving a battlefield he did not expect to lose. 5 minutes later, my mom called me. I answered because my hands were still shaking, and I could already hear her crying through the speaker before she spoke. "It was a joke," she said. "It was a joke. Your father said it was a joke. Please just turn it back on. I cannot handle this." My heart broke and hardened at the same time, which is a weird feeling if you have never had it. It is like mourning and protecting yourself in the same breath. "Mom," I said, "listen to me. He came to my office. He tried to humiliate me in front of my staff. And someone used my information to apply for credit." She gasped like she did not want to believe it, like belief would make her responsible. "I did not know," she said. "I did not know. I swear I did not know." Then she said the line that almost pulled me back into the old role. "You are all we have," she whispered. And that was the climax, the point where everything felt like it could collapse, because part of me wanted to rescue her, to flip all the switches back on, to let her believe everything was fine again. But another part of me knew that rescuing her without boundaries was just enabling him, and enabling him would eventually hurt my kid too. I told her something I had never said out loud to my mother. "Mom," I said, "I am not your emergency fund. I am your son, and you do not get to trade me for peace with him." She sobbed and said, "I am sorry. I am so sorry." I believed she meant it, and I also believed it was not enough. That evening, Kyle texted me from a new number. "You ruined everything. Dad is freaking out. Mom is falling apart. You think you are some big man now." Then another text. "If you do not fix this, you will regret it." I forwarded the messages to Renee. Renee responded with one line that felt like a shield. "We will handle this." The next day, Renee drafted a formal notice. It stated that all future communication would go through counsel, that any attempt to contact my business or my clients would be considered interference, that any fraud would be reported, and that my father was not to come to my home or workplace again. It was not dramatic. It was precise. It was the kind of language that does not care about guilt trips. When my dad received it, he tried to call anyway. I did not answer. And then the last desperate move came, the one that could have ruined me if I had not prepared. A police officer showed up at my house on Wednesday afternoon for a welfare check, because someone had reported that I was unstable and had threatened self-harm. I stood on my porch with my hands visible, my kid behind me asking what was happening, and my stomach went cold. The officer was polite, professional, but you could see the caution in his posture. I explained calmly, showed him the harassing messages, told him I had legal counsel involved, told him my father was retaliating. The officer's eyes softened in that way they do when they recognize a pattern. He took notes, gave me a card, and told me to call if it happened again. After he left, I walked back inside, locked the door, and sat at my kitchen table with my head in my hands. For a minute, I felt like everything was lost, like no matter what I did, my family could still reach into my life and poison it. Then I looked up and saw my kid watching me quietly, his face confused and worried, and I remembered what I was protecting. So I got up, called Renee, and said, "We are filing the report." Renee did not hesitate. "We are," she said. 2 weeks later, after the police report was filed and the credit freeze was in place and the formal notice had been delivered, the noise started to change. It did not stop, not entirely, but it shifted from confident threats to frantic scrambling. Kyle stopped texting. Ashley posted vague, dramatic stuff online about betrayal and family values, which honestly was almost funny because she had never lifted a finger to help anyone without an audience. My dad went silent, which was the loudest thing he could do, because my dad uses silence like a weapon and also like a way to avoid consequences. My mom was the only one who kept reaching out, and her calls became less about anger and more about fear. One afternoon she called and her voice was small, like she had shrunk inside herself. "He is sleeping on the couch," she said. "He barely talks to me. Kyle is blaming me. Ashley says I should have controlled the situation. I cannot breathe in my own house." I sat in my car in the parking lot outside my office, hands on the steering wheel, and I felt that old pull to rescue her again. The difference now was that I could see the cost. I told her I would meet her for coffee alone at a place halfway between our houses in public during daylight, like it was a business negotiation, because in a way it was. When she walked in, she looked older than she had 2 weeks earlier, like stress had wrinkled her from the inside. She sat across from me, holding her hands together like she was praying. I did not bring a speech. I did not bring anger. I brought truth. "Mom," I said, "I love you, and I am not abandoning you. But I am not going back to how it was." She started crying again and said, I know, I was wrong. I should have stopped him. I should have protected you." I believed her, and it hurt because it meant she had always known on some level that protection was needed and had chosen peace instead. I slid a folder across the table. In the folder was a plan Renee helped me build. I told my mom I would help with housing, but not by sending money directly to her or my dad. I would pay a set amount into a separate account managed by a third-party trustee, a professional, someone neutral, and it would only be used for mortgage and utilities. No cash, no cards, no access, no Kyle, no Ashley, no dad. If my dad tried to interfere or intimidate again, the payments would stop and the plan would shift to helping my mom relocate instead. My mom stared at the folder like it was written in a foreign language. "You do not trust us," she whispered. I nodded. "I trust you to be my mom," I said. "I do not trust you to stop him." That sentence landed between us like a heavy object. She flinched, and I hated that I had to say it, but I also felt a strange relief because it was true, and truth is cleaner than pretending. She asked what my dad would say. I told her I did not care what my dad would say, and hearing myself say that felt like stepping into sunlight after years of dimness. My mom signed the agreement a few days later, not with happiness, but with resignation, like she finally understood the game had changed. My dad refused to speak to me, which was fine. Kyle went quiet once he realized the money was not coming back. Ashley tried one last time to guilt me, texting that mom is sick with stress and you are killing her, and I responded with one line. I am not killing her. I am refusing to be killed. Then I blocked her. That might sound cold, but it was survival, and survival is not always pretty. The resolution is not a clean movie ending where everyone learns a lesson and hugs happen under soft music. The truth is, I still get waves of grief over it. I will be driving home from work and I will see a son and father walking into a hardware store and my chest will tighten, because there is a version of life where my dad was proud of me without needing my money, where my brother wanted my company instead of my credit limit, where my sister loved me without treating me like a resource. But that version is not the one I got. What I got was a choice. I got to decide whether my kid grows up watching his dad get emotionally mugged at every holiday, or watching his dad hold a boundary and still love people from a distance. I got to decide whether the word family means obligation without respect, or love with limits. A month after the birthday dinner, my mom called me on a Sunday evening. Her voice was steadier. She told me she had started going to counseling through her church, and she said something that surprised me. I did not realize how afraid I was of him until you stopped being afraid, she said. I sat there with my phone against my ear, looking out at my backyard where the snow was melting into muddy patches, and I felt something loosen inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a tiny sliver of hope that my mom might someday choose herself over the man who trained her to shrink. Then she asked me softly, "Do you think you will ever come back for a family dinner?" I did not answer right away because that is the moral dilemma I still sit with. If I never go back, I protect my peace, but I also leave my mom alone in that house with the man who made our family feel like a courtroom. If I go back even once, I risk slipping into old roles, and old roles are slippery like ice. So I told her the only honest thing. I do not know, I said, but if I do, it will be because I want to see you, not because anyone is demanding a price of admission. She whispered okay, and I could hear her breathing, calm for once. After we hung up, I walked into my kid's room and saw him asleep, hoodie on, one arm thrown over his pillow, safe in that messy kid way. I stood there for a minute and thought about the line my dad threw at me like a joke. We disown you. And I realized something that took the sting out of it at least a little. A family that only claims you when you pay is not disowning you. They are just revealing the truth. I turned off the light, closed my kid's door gently, and went downstairs to rinse a coffee mug, the simplest routine in the world, and I let that be the aftertaste. Sometimes the most dramatic victory is not shouting back, not winning the argument, not proving you are right. Sometimes it is just quietly choosing a life where love does not come with a receipt.